Is the Everest climbing season over? Is it beginning? Is it both? Kinda. This is Ben Ayers. It's May 20th. This is your Everest.Live Daily Dispatch. Probably comes as no big surprise to you all that I'm wearing the same clothes I've worn pretty much since we began this thing. And sort of like my outfit, Everest Base Camp and the whole infrastructure of the Everest climbing industry is starting to get a little tired and worn. It's been really interesting the past few days to experience the exhilaration of that huge crowded summit push. And now that everyone's returning to camp yesterday and today, the vibe here is totally changing. So basically what's happening on the mountain right now is the weather has turned. There's not really any climbers up high now that are shooting for the summit. Everyone's waiting a few days, and it looks like the next decent weather window is going to be around the 22nd. So there are some groups that are cooling their heels in Camp 2, but most of the last wave of climbers are doing last-minute preparations here in base camp, and will be heading up tonight or have headed up already. So high up on the mountain, there's actually not a whole lot going on here on the south side. The weather and the winds are really unpredictable. So most groups that made that big push for the 18th and the 19th weather windows are on their way down to base camp, and many of them have just arrived. Last night was an interesting night in that it was a combination of sort of joy and exhaustion. And many successful summiteers came back into camp, including this National Cadet Corps group from the Indian Army. It was a bunch of youth from the Indian Army who had a completely successful expedition. Their whole team of 38 people made it up to the summit. They were jubilant. You could hear them singing and dancing all night long. But for many of the other solo climbers or people who are here for their own reasons, when the teams here at Seven Summits Treks brought out cake, there was a lot of joy, there was a lot of happiness. But it also was combined with this sort of sense of fatigue. And it's been interesting now as many climbers have summited or have ended their attempts and are coming back to base camp. Base camp is being slowly dismantled, and porters are coming up to bring it back down the mountain where it can be shuttled off, getting ready for either the Pakistan season or getting repaired and getting ready for the fall climbing season on Manaslu. And so as we have this one final hurrah for the season, I kind of want to finish up today's Daily Dispatch with a story that came in last night. There's a Russian guide named Vladimir who is based in the same base camp that we are here at Seven Summits Treks, but leading his own expedition. He and his group sort of hung out in the tent next to ours, but of course we'd bump into each other, and super friendly, super interesting guy. Last night, as he headed up towards the summit, as he was descending towards Camp 4, he ran into a different group of Russian climbers that weren't his clients. And they were suffering from lack of oxygen. Vladimir took his own oxygen supply and gave it to them. And in the process of giving them the oxygen they needed, of course, he wasn't able to travel very fast because he didn't have enough oxygen. And the rescue team moved on without him. And eventually he really struggled to get back into camp. And the Seven Summits group had to send a rescue team out to find and rescue Vladimir. Last night as we were going to bed, part of why the summit celebrations were a little somber for us is that we were listening to the radio reports about Vladimir being barely conscious, having to be injected with dextromethasone, and how the Sherpa team was helping him slowly move down the mountain to safety, and how they then put him on the oxygen that they had. This morning, I was very relieved to hear his voice on the radio. He had made it down to Camp 3. He's moving down to Camp 2. Not recovered, but going to make it. And in the process, being on the radio, he bumped into a Sherpa who was suffering from snow blindness and decided that he was going to stop his own rescue to try to help that Sherpa get down. And there's a very interesting debate on the radio that ensued where the Camp 2 manager was very diplomatically explaining to Vladimir that he needed to get down for himself and that other people would be sent up to help the snowblind Sherpa. And to me, I guess what that story illustrates isn't just Vladimir's selflessness, which could be construed as foolishness. To me, what that story really shows is the goodness of a lot of the people that are up here. And there's an impression that Everest is full of a lot of rich people on this sort of selfless quest. And I think those people are here, but to be honest, you really have to seek them out. They're not the majority. There's a lot of people here like Vladimir, and there's a lot more people here like that base camp manager and like the Sherpas who dropped everything to help Vladimir get down to safety. And that's, I guess, what I wanted to finish today's Daily Dispatch with, is just to throw a highlight on and a thank you to the literally thousands of Nepali men and a few Nepali women that are here at base camp and are high on the mountain and are completely and entirely and are selflessly devoted to making this whole thing work and to keeping everybody alive. And without that, Everest climbing would be inconceivably dangerous and miserable and uninspiring. And it's those people, it's these men and women that we don't often see. And Vladimir's story, again, just really illustrated to me that he was surrounded by a community of talented and caring individuals that allowed him to be as selfless as he is and allowed him to survive that. So that's my Daily Dispatch for today. We'll talk to you soon.